Hey, I am Joe. I am from Tasket.me, and today we are having a conversation with two professionals in the design industry, more specifically the UX UI design. UX UI has become a quite a highly demanded kind of job position from our clients, and I think a lot of designers out there are interested in thinking about various career opportunities out there in this very big design sphere. So today we want to talk with two guests today to get more insights on what are UX UI designers and what should you do to become one in the future as well. So please introduce yourself, starting from Graham, and after that, Claire, please.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks for having me on the interview session. Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Newman, and I'm the founder of Design School Asia.
Okay.
All right, and hi everyone. I'm Claire, and I'm a UX UI designer at a software agency called OOZOU here in Bangkok.
Okay, thank you very much. So I guess moving to the questions today regarding UX UI design. Now that I have a lot of students who are in a different major, for example, they are from marketing, they are from communications, but they're interested in the design career path, right? So they think about graphic design and different various other design related careers. So could you just quickly go through what are the different career paths you can take as a design student? And then maybe talk about specifically UX UI. What are the differences and why did you choose UX UI as your career?
Okay, so there are actually multiple paths in design. Actually, I think the most commonly known one that everyone kind of thinks of immediately first is a graphic designer. But even within like the print or digital realm, there's also like brand designers, like an art director, for example, illustrators, like the list goes on. But specifically within UX and UI design, there are also different like avenues that you can explore as well. So for example, you could become a UX strategist or a UX researcher, for example, or someone who's more focused on the information architecture of a software, for example. So yeah, those are a few different paths within the design realm. And why I chose to become a UX and UI designer myself is because I was always really interested in mobile apps. It's something that's really up and coming, it's something we use every day. And I actually started out as a graphic designer, but decided to move in this realm because I think, this is the future. We're always on our phones. And it's also really interesting to see how people interact with different apps and also the behavior of everything. So that's why that really drew me into this industry.
That's interesting. So you shifted from a graphic designer to a UX UI designer.
Yes,
specifically
that's correct.
In the mobile kind of interaction space, in a sense.
Yeah.
So was that shift difficult, or was that transition quite smooth, or what were the kind of steps that you needed to take in order to kind of shift from a graphic designer to a UX UI designer, for example?
Yeah. So from personal experience, it wasn't really like a struggle like to shift from graphic design over, because luckily enough where I was working at before, they already started doing some UX UI work, and I got to put my hands on those sort of like jobs as well. I think that every designer, you have already the mindset of attention to detail, wanting to be creative and also delivering the best work possible. So I think that shift isn't so hard. I think if you are enthusiastic about moving towards UX or UI design, I really think, like there's no limit really.
Okay, great. So you studied at a design school, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So were there any kind of very differences in expectations, right? So you things you study at school sometimes could be different on the things that you're doing at the job market. Were there anything that was dramatically different, or was there something in that were unexpected, for example, that you had to make some adjustments?
Yeah, I definitely think you have to make some adjustments because, when you're in, then the education environment, I think you generally have more time and things generally don't go wrong like as they would in a job environment. For example, a client could come back and say they don't like this direction. And I guess in the education environment, you have that cushion where you have your instructors guiding you, but when you're thrown out into the outside world, you kind of have to fend for yourself and be very self-motivated, and you have to learn to set your own goals. And also I think the most important thing that I learned was you have to be wary of time, like because time is money, for example, in an agency. So that's really important. You have to be also very communicative. Like, for example, when I was a student, I think I was a little bit timid to ask questions when I first started out, but this is something that I think is really important. If you don't know, ask. If you need help, ask, because and everyone says there's no wrong answer, but there's no wrong question to anything. But yeah, that's something that's really true. It's better to ask and, like learn from there.
Was there a very memorable kind of experiences working with a particular client? Obviously, you don't have to say the client's name, but was there some experience that you felt that was a very important learning lesson regarding the various things that you just mentioned, which you can kind of share on how you kind of overcome that, for example?
Yeah, definitely. So I worked on a print job, for example, for a client. This was during my graphic design days. And I think a big learning curve is, when the client is not happy with what you've done, or they decide to go down, this is always like the saddest thing for designers, is they decide to go down a route that is like the worst route possible. We always have this story where some clients may not have the best taste, and it really breaks our designers' heart to have to go down that route. But at the end of the day, you kind of learn to you have to accept this criticism, because at the end of the day they are your client, and deliver the best work possible, even though it doesn't make you the happiest.
Yeah, extremely kind of important insight there. And I think a lot of kind of designers do feel that way, where you are sometimes have to compromise the aesthetics and the best work against their clients' expectations, which is very difficult to kind of balance. So there's a lot of sales and negotiation thing going on, which a lot of the students as a graphic designer might not think about. One of the most important things is about client management and so on as well, right? Which is very businessy in a sense, but extremely important as well.
Exactly.
So I guess then coming back to your kind of transition from a graphic designer to a UX UI designer. So you obviously were passionate. You had some experiences working in UX UI. So were you kind of shift your career within the company, or did you move to another company, or I mean to OOZOU right now from a different company, or was it like an internal shift?
Actually, it wasn't an internal shift. I actually asked when I was a graphic designer at that company to whether I could do some more UX UI work. And luckily, they gave me more projects because I was enthusiastic about them. But then after that, I shifted to a BA, so a business analyst. So I went down this route because I wanted to understand, the inner workings of information architecture as well, because I felt like that was really important, and it was a good stepping stone for me to then go into my next role, which was actually a UX role, a UX UI role. So yeah, that's kind of like where I sort of the direction I sort of like took my career. But that's not necessarily what everyone needs to do. It's actually totally up to where you want to take yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then maybe you could kind of quickly go through your kind of experiences finding a job in a UX UI position. So obviously, it's a very specific profession. So I'm assuming that are specific questions or something that is different from other kind of career paths, right? What are the interview questions? What kind of portfolio are they expecting? And could you just give us some experiences of your kind of path to finding the position in the UX/UI?
Sure. So I think the most important thing for any designer, and especially a UX/UI designer, is your portfolio. And I think the good thing about the design industry is that, of course, hiring managers will look at your resume, but I don't think it's the most important thing. And with experience of looking through applicants here at OOZOU, I've looked through a few portfolios, and what we give the most important to is how you present your work, your mindset, and attention to detail. So if your portfolio can encapsulate all of this, then I think that's totally fine. I think that's the first step through the door. And yeah, another thing that we would like to see is also how you communicate your design decisions. I think that's very important because that also then leads into how you would present your work to the client and why you did the things you did, for example. There's actually quite a lot more that I could delve into, but that, might take a while.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I guess you did see a lot of portfolios from various applicants who are applying to OOZOU as well. So mostly right now, the applications portfolio are a website, or some are paper-based, some are PDF-based. What's like the general vibe right now?
The general vibe is a lot of PDFs, but I think what really sets you apart is also having a website. Because that's also a good chance for you to showcase your personality. I don't think you should be scared to showcase a bit of your, design flair and your personality in your design portfolio, because it's sort of an extension of who you are as a designer. So I think, I guess the best advice I could give to any designer applying is to make sure your design portfolio is as polished as it can be, because for example, if there's a spelling error here and there, that's also a little bit of a worry. So just attention to detail is key.
I would also suggest that a differentiator would be subject engagement, and that could be either in the form of short articles. Medium, for example, is a very good platform, or commentary on the industry, because people who are hiring you are looking for criticality and are looking for subject engagement. So as well as the core offerings of an excellent showcase in portfolio and a cover letter, and the ability to communicate to both a design and a non-design audience verbally, using writing skills and commentary and keeping that conversation current, I think is also an excellent differentiator for all candidates.
Okay, so I think, Graham, maybe we can shift to you now, because we are talking about how you differentiate yourself. And this was a very important aspect I think a lot of designers don't think about, which is personal branding in this kind of very social media, LinkedIn heavy recruitment industry as well. As you said, it is important to explain your work, not just show off your work. What is your thought behind it, right? And I guess this is something that for a lot of designers they are not used to. What kind of advice would you give in terms of kind of structuring your thoughts into a verbal / text-based form, for example?
Well, I think all designers are inherently quite introvert. And you see the progression at undergraduate level from, rather timid, shy, creative, artistic people, and as they go through undergraduate programs, they do develop, the verbal and visual rhetoric. The nature of the business is we have to be able to communicate to a non-design audience, and I think the better you get at that, the more money you'll make, because you'll probably end up being in a sales position. I think the way to do that is to just really immerse yourself in the conversations around the industry. Look at who is writing about this stuff, who is commenting, and because of the social media platforms, it's very easy to do that. It's never been easier to actually connect with the industry leaders across all ASEAN countries, not necessarily just North America, Australia, and Europe. So it's having the ability to be critical and ask questions why this piece of work or this current industry trend, and is that right or wrong? And having that ability to have subject discourse and to discuss these things at a professional level. This is something that all young designers struggle with, and I think there is a limit to how much raw talent will get you there. It just comes down to practice, and it comes down to having that passion. As Claire said at the start, the key word that we keep coming back to is mindset. And if this is an investment you've made in 3 or 4 years at undergraduate level, hopefully this will be the runway to a very enriching career for 20, 30 years in my case. So, we're looking for young designers that have fire, that have passion, and not only having self-directed projects, but having the ability to have subject discourse. I think it's very, very important, and that comes down to reading, looking at who's writing about this, looking at the leading studios, emerging technologies. This is very difficult to do 10, 15 years ago, but because we have this we live in this information age, no longer an industry age, all of these resources are available to junior designers. So my advice would be, if you want to understand the animals, get out into the jungle and just look and immerse yourself in what's going on.
Yeah, one of the people I love to follow in LinkedIn are UX/UI designers. Sometimes they do before and afters, maybe a very legacy website, legacy product that has not changed for a decade, and they do a before and after, right? Before a very old way of doing UX/UI, then a very modern age design style as well. And we see a lot of discussion going on within that kind of post as well. So that'll be quite interesting for the students as well to start doing and get feedback on your work. And as a startup myself, getting feedback and criticism is the way to learn. And being out there and be vulnerable to get criticism is extremely important to get that thick skin, and also to have a critical eye, actually kind of assess your own work as well. So I think that was a lot of the discussion regarding mindset, the fire, and the ambition, and being self-driven is probably something that was extremely important as a key fact. But as a UX/UI designer, obviously there are tools and softwares and certain skills that is required to become a UX/UI designer. In your kind of experiences, what are the key skills, especially the hard skills, technical skills? And what are the things that, as a software and tools, are becoming much more popular in this kind of industry right now?
Well, certainly, I think there's the key creative suite that Adobe offer. I believe Adobe have been quite complacent recently, and we have new companies entering the markets, most specifically Figma, that's really changed the paradigm shift and changed the way that designers work, because everything is now collaborative. Figma is an excellent example of using technology collaboratively, and it's free to start for anyone who is a designer or involved in startup. There are also whiteboard technologies such as Miro, Prototype.io. A lot of these companies are looking to take market share from the leaders such as Adobe, and I think that's overdue, and I think that's a very, very good thing to do. there's an enormous amount of resources available through Arjan YouTube to get designers up and running. These courses are vocational skills driven. They won't necessarily give you the education, but to actually go from not knowing anything about the software to being fairly competent. UXUI offer excellent programs of study for a very good level entry price, and so these tools are available, and I think that the challenge is with actually focusing on learning the tools. They always change. However, the principles of good design don't, and that's the differentiation between education. It's transformative as opposed to skills based. Now, how you actually approach a design challenge, I don't think has changed. The tools and the platform have, but the principles and elements of good design haven't. I think in terms of the soft skills, specifically for user experience design, it's a fascinating industry because it kind of it's somewhere within the margins of business analytics and research and design, and probably the closest traditional industry to it has been branding and identity. There is a lot of strategic work done for corporate identity and branding, a lot of user testing, a lot of behavioral science behind these touch points of identities and branding that we look towards. So this has been here for decades, and the availability of technology and the amount of technology that we are reliant on will continue. This is the fascinating thing about the industry, is that it's certainly Asia's fastest growing creative industry, and I think will continue to over the next 20 years. I strongly believe that Figma will be the primary tool for communication designers for the next 10 to 20 years. And that's a really interesting space to be in, this concept of kind of semi-open source, where plugins and collaboration is widely available. I think that will continue as well. So there's never been a better time to get up and running with the tools. The soft skills, I think, is also available for just having that the ability to critique your own work and get into the habit that this is not it's not a personal attack. And when you become as old as me, you're so Teflon coated, and I'm sure Claire will agree, that you realize that these things are intended to make the product better. And that's done through being professional about it. There are fascinating stories about global creative directors in the 1980s stamping up and down on their juniors' pieces of work, and then they remind their designers, their junior designers, well, I was equally as rubbish as you when I started. So it's a rite of passage, and it's nothing to be concerned about. Providing the person giving that critique and feedback is professional, and of course they are, because they're running companies and they're responsible for payroll and they're responsible for the welfare of their staff.
Yeah, so that's a lot of kind of information to kind of digest. Definitely Figma is extremely important. Our team also uses Figma. I use Figma to do wireframes. I do Figma to kind of do product demos, to think about when it's communicating between teams as well. So definitely something that we believe in as well. And definitely soft skills, that is quite important. I think a lot of the Asian students do have a problem with this. They do feel a little demotivated. I don't know that's the word, but less when they're criticized in terms of work. And definitely something that I guess learn as you go and become more kind of experienced in this industry as well. However, so if we were to kind of take a person who has a base level design experiences and turning into a UX UI designer that is ready to kick ass, what are like the phases would you kind of talk through or help out in terms of transforming a beginner designer into a UX UI designer? Could you kind of maybe summarize it into phases and what each phase kind of pertains in terms of learning and improving as well?
I think the kind of boot camp process of it would be to get over the assumption that your design is actually appropriate for your market. It's not, and it invariably isn't. Remember that we never design for ourselves, we always design for other people. So having that ability to detach your subjectivity and to look through the lens of the service user and service provider and the various stakeholders involved in the project. I think there is also a necessity to look at what is the business proposition of this. What are we trying to communicate and how versus the budget? How can we scale? How can we scale this? This is an inherent problem with designers in Thailand who tend to look at the challenges in Thailand and not look at the broader context of other ASEAN markets. So I think it's having that, taking the breadth, the depth, and the range of the subjects and synthesizing that and distilling that down. The actual mechanics of user experience design, I believe, are inherently there. If you've been through an undergraduate program, you understand color theory and typography, and this kind of these things have been around since the Bauhaus. So applying that to specific to user experience and user interface, the key is in the words there. We are designing for users, and irrespective of whether you're doing that for corporate, for SCB Bank or equivalent, or you're doing something within artistic practice as an installation, we have to consider the people, the technology and the organization, and it's that kind of blend of people, technology and organization that I think we encourage students to look at holistically.
Okay, thank you. So I guess to end, beginning with Graham, I definitely want to kind of give you some time to kind of explain what Design School Asia is. So for someone who is interested, what is Design School Asia in a very short and concise manner, and how would you get involved in that?
Okay, so Design School Asia is a groundbreaking postgraduate institute. We are very interested in social, economic and cultural value and creating change in this part of the world. And we do that through industry collaboration. We have a 17-week program, which is delivered through blended learning. It's equivalent to 15 credits, and it has industry collaboration because embedded in that is a co-op placement model. So the students will be pushed very, very hard for 10 weeks, and we then place them in industry for 5 weeks with the leading agencies in Bangkok. This is different from an internship. This is a placement, and we expect our students to be as good as someone that's perhaps been there for 2 or 3 months, and they get paid market rate. And this model has been around for many years. University of Cincinnati started this actually in 1906. So the co-op model, the relationship between industry and the academy has existed before. What we're doing is offering this as a way to accelerate both the student and help with building and scaling with industry here. The students then come back after 5 weeks and wrap up their work. And of course, the opportunity for the industry partner is they could potentially hire this student as well. So a very, very unique program, and we're very excited about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Graham. So coming back to Claire, so maybe you can also explain what OOZOU does. And obviously you said that you had the opportunity to look through several portfolios yourself as well. So maybe just kind of quickly go through the products and services. And if you are looking for anyone to join, what kind of advice you can give who are an aspiring UX UI designer or a designer in general?
All right. So yeah, OOZOU is a software agency. We're headquartered here in Bangkok, but we do have sales offices in Europe and in Hong Kong. And yeah, just to give a bit of a rundown about OOZOU itself and the environment, we're a flat hierarchy here. So, we like to keep things transparent. We appreciate open communication. We don't say like, okay, you're maybe like head of project management. I'm too scared to say anything to this person. Like we don't really work like that. We like to, openly talk and we all get along, and we keep it also professional. And I think a good thing about OOZOU itself is that we only work 35-hour weeks, because I think a lot of designers know that burnout is a real thing. And yeah, we definitely don't want that to become a problem. So in terms of applying, like we are looking for designers. Like I would say we're not actively looking, but if someone's interested in joining, we will always look at our portfolio, and if something catches our eye, we'll definitely be in touch. So maybe last piece of advice to any designers applying would be, don't be afraid. I think sometimes when you look at a job description, it can be daunting. You kind of freak out and think like, whoa, like, well, I don't have this skill. And, they want someone who has 3 years experience. But I think you shouldn't let that stop you. If you are confident in your portfolio and if you are enthusiastic, then, there are no barriers really. And, there's nothing to lose if you apply, right? So, that's my advice for designers.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Thank you, Graham. So it was
I would just add to Claire's comment, and I say this to all the students in Thailand: accept the fact that life is incredibly tough and incredibly unfair, and get over it. Design graduates in Thailand are equally as good as anyone in North America and anyone in Europe and anyone in Japan and anyone in Australia. The quality of student here at the leading top 5 university undergraduate level is outstanding. And have that confidence and have that drive and believe in yourself, because Bangkok is a center of creative excellence. So once students and young designers get over the fact that life is incredibly tough and incredibly unfair, you have an equal chance as anybody else.
And with that said, thank you guys for the call today. And thank you for all the insights. I think a lot of the audience today will feel very, very inspired. And also a structure of a path that it could take. I think a lot of the students are lost right now. And now we do have DSA who will give a much more structured and well understood kind of path towards becoming a UX UI designer. And obviously, and work with professionals such as Claire, and get to work 35 hours per week and use their kind of creative juices in a more efficient way as well. Okay, thank you guys, and looking forward to seeing you guys again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.